And in fact, I can't think of anything more boring than being able to predict the future.
Hello and welcome to HolisticCircle podcast. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy. And from, I think, Orlando, here with us, Samuel Abrams. Hello, Samuel.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
I'm delighted to be here today on your podcast.
So first of all, welcome, dear viewers. This year is a little bit different than last year. It's going to be more practical, more hands-on, trying to find good ways how to start spirituality, explore it. And we have the perfect guest here with us. And maybe before we get into it, can you quick give us I know a long life, a lot of things you have done, but give us a quick pointers of what you're doing right now. And then let's go into a very useful session that everyone who is trying to explore spirituality, I think, will get a lot of positive how to do it in a more safe and in a more effective kind of a way.
I've known I was psychic since I was about 8 years old, when I started to have dreams of the future, and I was also picking up a lot of emotions from other people, although I think a lot of that was done subconsciously. But eventually it morphed into picking up headaches from other people. And at that point, I had to learn how to meditate to get rid of the pain. And later on, I developed shielding techniques so that I was picking up things that I didn't want to pick up. But as it turns out that I was what they call a precognitive and an empath. So that started me on many years of looking and research into metaphysics and spiritual areas. I've read a lot of books and done many years of study. So hope I can spread some of that knowledge around.
Right. I have to tell our viewers that we agreed before this podcast that I will not be sitting here the whole time and said, yes, you're absolutely right. And I think there is no pleasure for the audience, an interviewer who is just definitely, yes, absolutely, you're right, the whole time. So I already had like 3 things about headaches and having to learn to meditate. And it's going to be the whole hour that you and I have quite a lot of similarities going on. So, but you are the guest and I'm the host, so I will try to not silently the whole time.
Okay. I look forward to some challenging questions.
I agree with everything you say. It's very hard for me to challenge. But just one thing you just said this second, and I'm sorry if I make a funny joke right from the start, it's horrible. But you said that you saw the future. And then I was thinking, oh God, you must have nightmares right now these days.
Thankfully, most of what I see comes in very small snippets. And there's no one holding up a newspaper with a time and a date on it. So it's seeing into the future the way I do was singularly not helpful. And not something, it's like when the event actually happened, I'll say, okay, I've seen this already. Let's go on to the next thing. It's actually boring. And in fact, I can't think of anything more boring than being able to predict the future absolutely.
Absolutely. I guess it's more a curse than a gift, most likely.
And there have been some interesting science fiction and fantasy stories written about that. There's one by Spider Robinson, a short story called Five Sight, which is very instructive, about this gentleman who could see the future and do nothing to change it.
Mm.
And what he did do, though, is if there was going to be a calamity, he could be there with medical supplies to help out, but he couldn't actually change anything.
So do you actually think, when we are already in that subject, do you, from your personal experience, before we go into the main topic of the podcast, but do you actually think that the future is written to some extent, or it's leaning towards, you think it's more like a movement, or do you really think that some of the events are pre-written?
They are and they aren't. And let me explain that. To me, it's all based on karma. A lot of karma is what we've done in the past, but it's also what we're doing right now. I had one tarot reading that I did where the reading was going in one direction and suddenly turned like 90 degrees. And it confused me at first, but I realized that the person I was giving the reading to was actually really listening to my advice and making changes in the way he thought, and that was making changes in his future karma. So in a way it's fixed, but we do have control. We can make changes.
But the big events, you think, those key events that are happening on the world level, you think that those key events are predetermined?
No, I think it's fluid. If you look at the writings by Edgar Cayce, I don't know if you're familiar with him, the Sleeping Prophet. He predicted many, many disasters, and he predicted a lot of other things that did come about, but a lot of the disaster did not come about. And I think that's because of changes that people did in their ways of thinking and in their actions.
I mean, it's a hot topic because a lot of people like to believe into these predictions. And as you said, there are famous seers out there who gave the world some predictions. A lot of it came true. A lot of it didn't come true.
Yeah. Well, also, a lot of the things that people see, especially a lot of the disasters or negative things, the disasters and negative things tend to come through, in quotes, louder than other things, because there's more emotional content there. And I think that's why a lot of people tend to pick them up. And also because the negative is what we learn from. Not too many people learn from good experiences.
Yeah, we just talked about it.
Yes. But if we can learn from the negative ahead of time and understand the lessons that are being taught, then those lessons no longer have to happen. And yes, the future can be changed.
Right. Well, it's a big topic, and especially when we talk to people who do astro travel and things like that, they always are very unspecific about time. They say like time seem to happen past and future almost at the same time. So it's very confusing, the conversations they're having up there. But that's exactly the question that you and me are asking ourselves. So let's a little bit explain what you actually do. Let's talk about the work that you provide for a lot of people that you're teaching. So before we lose the audience with us talking about everything and nothing.
Okay. Well, my main focus lately has been on reaching out to people who have empathic abilities. That is, that they can actually feel the emotions that other people have. This is not to say that that they're being sympathetic. No, they're actually feeling these emotions. And the trouble is that they can pick it up, but many of them don't have any training in how to put it down again.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to become overwhelmed, to be picking up too much. This is especially true of a lot of people in the health field because they get involved in it because they're empathic to begin with. So when I mentioned headaches, I did that for a reason, because that's where I learned about my own empathic abilities and how to protect myself. So that's what I want to teach about. And it's funny because I see very few people teaching about this. And most of what's in the literature on psychic self-defense and related areas, to me, is very, very inadequate. What you see most often is a comment about calling down the white light of divine protection, or sometimes it's a golden light, or whatever color. But to me, all right, this is a one-size-fits-all approach, which is not the case.
Right. Samuel, before we jump into this, because this is so important stuff, let's help people to orientate. First of all, how do people know if they have empathic abilities? Let's start really step by step. We have 1 hour time. So let's take this. So this podcast today is really to help you to do this more safe, to do it in a more conscious way. And as you said, there are thousands of books written how to become an empath. There are thousands of courses online how to get these psychic abilities, but basically hardly anyone is out there seriously helping you to actually shut it down once you're overwhelmed. So let's start with the first question. How do people know if they have it? Let's start there, please.
For me, it was sensing things that I realized rather early on, that these were not my emotions, anger, sadness, whatever, and that I was feeling these things for no reason at all. And when I looked around, like I might see somebody crying and I feel like crying myself and say, well, wait a minute, this isn't my stuff. This belongs to someone else. So the key in a lot of this is simply awareness of your own emotion. What are you feeling? Why are you feeling it? It comes also to mindfulness of paying 100% attention to what's going on with you, but also asking yourself, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I feeling this? This is a Buddhist idea of mindfulness of emotion. But really, it just boils down to simple awareness.
So people are watching this now. They don't know, am I psychic? Am I not? I mean, everybody comes into a house with some friends
Okay.
and I mean,
I would say, yeah, everyone has at least a potential for psychic abilities. And we're all connected on some level. And to me, it's a natural ability that everybody has. But the reason that more people don't express it is twofold. One is that society in general does not support it. A mother may find her child saying, oh, yes, I can see colors, or I can hear the thoughts of other people. And the mother will say, oh, it's just imaginary. It's just in your head. It's not real. So it's not supported. And the other thing is, as I said, the negative emotions are what come through the loudest. And a child may hear this and feel this and say, I don't want any part of this, and suppress it. Now, other aspects on this include karma, what happened in past lives, that you may have lessons to learn relating to this, which could be a whole variety of topics. Or say you misuse your abilities for selfish reasons, and now you're getting them again to learn how to use them right.
a lot of people have it, are not aware of it. They maybe go to a friend's house and can sense, ooh, they've been fighting or something. And it's just the first level, so to say, the first layer of an ability that so many people have. But actually, the more you pay attention, the more you tune into it, the more stronger and more concrete the messages are. So that's maybe the first thing that we learned here from you, that everybody has it. Some are more developed than others. Is this about right?
That's exactly right.
And the next thing that you said, that then some people, when they're confronted with this in early age, many people has no place in their life. And as you said, they suppress it, or they not everyone takes the opportunity by the horn. And then a lot of things happen around that suppressing or not handling it well or not being able to protect. This is the way you come in.
And it's very often that there may be some kind of trauma or something that will happen as you get older that will reignite these abilities. Or no, they'll just simply come out of nowhere on their own, or seemingly out of nowhere. And I've seen a lot of comments on Reddit under our telepathy or our empathy, where people talk about having these abilities. And one of the most common responses is to just simply isolate themselves, which is something that I tended to do as a child.
Absolutely. Now,
It's not, yeah, go ahead.
let's spend now a couple of minutes to talk about how it affects us, because that is what some people, where's the big misunderstanding that when we all have these abilities and we come in a room where everybody's partying and smiling and there is a good mood, of course we're dancing along with the mood. And when we go into a room where there's a funeral and everybody's crying, even if we don't know the person, we will not stay completely neutral. We can feel the sadness, we can feel it. But that's that everyday level that we all understand. But you go much further, that if you have this, you might pick up headache, you might pick up so many things. So how dangerous actually is this transition of emotions?
It can be very overwhelming. It affects most people the most in the medical field. because no, they're dealing with people all the time who are in pain, either mental or physical. Or let's say massage therapists who are actually in physical contact with people. But again, many, many people have these abilities, and I've talked to a few of them. And some of them have developed techniques to deal with it, but many of them are saying, well, I wish I could deal with it, but I can't. I don't know how.
I know that policemen suffer a lot. They're dealing with a lot of crazy situations, home domestic violence. They have to deal with people who have drug and alcohol abuse and things like that. I mean, their life is not roses, for example, or firefighters who have to go into horrible car accidents. So there's like a lot of this going on, not only doctors and who are every day confronted with diseases, but the thing is, how can it manifest? How strong can that actually be to make this clear to our viewers that this is basically a big deal?
Well, I think that this type of thing may be one of the main causes of burnout in many fields. As you say, police, fire. Many people learn to either ignore these feelings or suppress them, and that's not healthy either. Because say you're suppressing stuff that you pick up out on the street, but then you come home and your wife's trying to talk to you and you're suppressing that too. So this is not a healthy reaction. If you're bringing this stuff home. But as I said, I think it may be the cause of a lot of burnout in a lot of professions. It is an unrecognized cause.
Why do we all have this ability? Why did God, whoever gave us this talent, why did we get this talent? What is it useful for a human?
The basis is that we are all connected already on some level. If you look, I don't know if you're familiar with the aura, but we have the emotional aura that surrounds us. Now, people talk about the soul being something small and deep within themselves, and the opposite is true. The soul is around us all the time. It's a higher level, faster vibrational energy that's much larger and, in fact, does not have boundaries. We're like concentrations of energy. But those concentrations are connected to everyone and everything else without limit. Then you have what they call the mental body and the astral body. Now, these are closer in, tighter in. The mental body has boundaries, but they're porous. And because they're porous, this is what enables people to to read other people's thoughts. And then the astral body, that's where the emotions are. And the astral body can be tight to ourselves, or it can extend up to 30 or 40 feet. So when people talk about picking up another person's vibes, that's what they're talking about. And it can be very helpful to know, okay, this person doesn't like me, or that person really does like me, or, just where they're coming from. It can be very useful.
So you think it's a quality, especially early humans, most probably building communities, building tribes, that this kind of sensibility was helpful, maybe even before we knew how to have language, or maybe before we used to talk as humans too. Maybe this is part of the old way. When we didn't have words, we might have had feelings. Do you think there could be connections here?
That's been a theory I've heard from other people say that early humans were much more telepathic. And in fact, if you look at the writings about the Australian Aborigines, they talk about being telepathic with each other. And they said the main block to that is when people lie either to themselves or other people. That's what blocks it the most.
For sure.
I got that from a book called The Mute Message from Down Under.
Absolutely.
Very good book on that topic.
We understand now that we all have the ability, differently developed, and we all understand that basically, as you said, you really picked up headaches from other people and things like that. And we see that if you have professions with a lot of grievance and things like that, that it it comes to you. You're not immune against it. So it is a big deal by the end of the day, either undeveloped or suppressed. So basically now comes the fun part of this little podcast. Why there's so many people are desperate to tune up, why they want to get more information.
I mean, it can be helpful, but it can also be a bloody nuisance. As I said, I get these headaches, and I still pick up things of what they call a medical intuitive. So if someone's having a problem, I'll pick up on what it is, and I will feel it as a pain within my own body. And until I tell the other person what's going on, I can't do anything else. It just stays there. So it's really no fun. As I say, it can be very useful. And it's good to have it for, like, if you're involved in family matters, for instance. But if someone has a real bad day at the office, you don't want to bring that home, and you don't want to be picking it up from other people. You have to learn to control it.
Exactly. And this is where you come in play. You're one of the few people who actually dedicated the work to helping others not to tune up, but to actually control it in a good and healthy way. So now you said that basically there's not so much literature on the subject, which I agree with you. And the one that we have a lot coming from the magic world, where there is a lot of protections going on, but it's not as developed and not as serious as you said, to your understanding.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is they don't really need it, because most of the dark creatures are things that they themselves created. That not addressing their negative side, not addressing what they call their shadow self. And this is true generally, that this whole thing about draining you and attacking you and so forth, that does happen. But there's very little magical or supernatural about it. Like, now, there are, say, psychic vampires out there. You look at anybody who is, say, a narcissist, they're almost always psychic vampires. They're blaming everybody else for their problems, and they're sucking in that energy.
I worked also a couple of years as a therapist, or many years actually, and I had a lot of patients who actually were Reiki people. So a lot of my clients came to me because they completely destroyed their energy system, but trying to give Reiki to others and did not do it properly, did not protect them properly. And of course I had a lot of people who played around with magic because I had a reputation in this field. So they came to me doing their little dark dance in the night, and next day their kidney was cold as ice.
Yeah, well, let me go and handle this in 3 parts. The first is for the idiots who get drained when doing Reiki. In the training for Reiki, they say, do not use your own energy. Hook into higher sources. And this is what I do whenever I do a tarot reading or a healing or anything that I do involving other people. I always tap into the highest possible source that I can reach. And I do not use my own energy. That's why I can do anywhere from 15 to 20 readings in a row. And I actually wind up with more energy than when I started. I've also developed a technique in doing healing where I'll establish a contact between higher energy, myself, and the other person. And then I will step out of the line, kind of like doing a bypass, so that the contact is now direct from higher source to the other person. And I can go take a walk. I don't have to be there anymore.
Absolutely.
So, and I'm very careful never to pick up on the other person's energies, except as what's needed for, say, diagnosis, and just to tell what's wrong. But beyond that, I stay clear of that.
Okay, maybe now it's time that you explain the system that you have developed, or your thoughts about the protection. We gave people enough groundwork, so we can now look at your main achievements, that you have thought more and deeper than others about the proper way to protect yourself and to guard your emotions?
Okay. Well, first let's talk about the improper way, which is putting up the white light of protection.
All right.
Three. One is it makes you a deer in the headlight. There are entities out there that are not necessarily evil, but they're attracted to energy. But it also means that you're putting out a message that, oh, look, I'm special. I have something to protect. And it's done on the basis of fear. And whatever you fear and whatever you put energy into, that is what you attract. That's just the law of attraction in action, which I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with. So, those are the major problems. And the other problem is, well, you say the white light of divine protection. Most people don't have any clue as to what that really means. So they just wind up using their own energy, which is quite limited. So the first type of protection that I developed for myself and that I still use today is based on the element of water, which I have an affinity to. And still water reflects. So what I found very effective is I visualize a mirror around myself. It's open at the top to allow higher energies in. It's open at the bottom to allow energies to be grounded or to come from the earth. Everything else just gets reflected. And preferably, I would like to see it reflected back to whoever sent it. Because to me, that's working with karma. What you send out comes back. But the case with me is it gets sent to me and it goes back without ever touching me because of the shielding that I have up. And I've created the mirrors in such a way that they are tunable. I got this idea from watching TV and from electronics, where you can create a mirror or a device that will allow only a certain type of energy in or a certain amount of energy. And if it's the wrong type tries to come in, doesn't come in, doesn't make it. If too much tries to come in, it just gets reflected. So low levels are allowed through, but high levels are blocked. And that, I think, what makes my shielding fairly unique from what I've seen. And it doesn't block out everything. You can still tell what's going on around you. It can be very, very useful.
The first question is, how long do you think people need to learn? Or when you're teaching this, how much time it needs to, no matter how you see it, how long it takes to practice this?
And the reason is that everybody understands what a mirror is. So that visualizing it is relatively simple. And the idea is that you're forming a cylinder around yourself. Well, people know what that is. They know what that looks like. So it's not hard to do. As for it, now I keep mine up almost all the time, and learning how to tune it, that takes a little more practice. Learning how to be able to raise it instantly, yes, that takes some practice. But the basic concept, you can learn it in just a few hours. And I would say within a week, you would become fairly proficient with it.
How does the world perceive you if you basically now going to a party or to a place or to an office? And how will life change, or how will the people have comments about you, like you're Mr. Teflon? Or how do people react on that?
I hadn't really thought too much about that.
Sorry, it's me.
No, a lot of times, most people are not really aware. And they're so concerned with what they are putting out and what they're going to say and what they're going to do, that they really don't pay that much attention to what the other person is doing and saying and feeling. This is certainly true when I go out to, say, business meetings. They're not concerned about what you're going to say. They're concerned about what they're going to say. So they're very insensitive to what's going on around them. They're also insensitive to what they themselves are projecting.
That's another one, right? That most people not even aware of the stuff that goes out. So, but when you build the shield structure, do you also take great care of what you're sending out? So do you have like a reverse mirror, or that's not your concern?
For the most part, that's not my concern, but that's because I've been doing this a long time. And I try and focus on the idea for myself of being positive and of connecting with other people and feeling good and sending out good vibes. And in fact, if I were able to do that all the time, I wouldn't have to worry about shielding because people would resonate to my positive emotions and I wouldn't have to worry about their negative emotions so much.
But
In
that's a
fact,
very good
I've
point.
been asked that question in terms of magic. And it's like, how can you do magic? How can you do all this stuff? And the answer is, I don't worry. No, their negativity is not my problem.
But you made a very good point here, because people always say that if you, I mean, especially in America, there's a whole cult or culture about, staying positive, being upbeat, projecting affirmations. So in the way that you say that this is actually one of the most easy shielding ways, so to say, to go out there with a positive attitude, with a smile, that you would just right now say is a very basic shielding technique in itself.
It is, with only one major problem. And that is what is called self-talk in the psychological circles. So that a lot of people, on a conscious level, yes, they're sending out all this positive stuff. But on a subconscious level, best way to get is to give an example. Someone does a spell for money. Okay. First off, they're asking for the wrong thing. They don't want money. They want what money can buy. So that's it for your first problem right there. Second, though, when you ask for money, the self-talk kicks in and it says, I'm worthless. You have to work for money. Money is the root of all evil. All these negative ideas come up from the subconscious. So consciously, they want this, but subconsciously, they're shooting themselves in the foot. The same is true with being truly a positive person. And I have met very few people who are really and truly positive through and through. There have been a few that I've seen or met. One good example is the Dalai Lama. His energy and his positivity are just spectacular. I've also seen it among some martial artists because what they do is they close off their energy entirely and you can't read them. You have no idea they're a martial artist, but only the masters can do this. But then when they use their energy, they have 10 times more than anybody else because it's been highly concentrated and focused. They aren't putting it out all over the place.
That's an interesting one, because a lot of gurus and things like that, it's all about projecting and spreading this energy to make it magnetic to others, which is a two-way street, right? For a lot of these people, in one way they're spiraling, so to be magnetic. In the other way they're sucking people, so they're taking it from under and putting it back on top. So this is an interesting one, right?
Now, I mentioned the main shielding that I use for myself. I've developed some others because, one size does not fit all. So I've developed shields for each, relating to each of the elements in different personality type.
That would be my
So
next.
like for the element of earth, I've talked to people about visualizing themselves as a tree, that they take in the energy as though it were sunlight and just send it into their roots, into the earth.
That would have been my next question, that you really need to have, because you said you are connected to the water, and so the mirror, yes, everybody knows what a mirror is, but not everyone can feel this reflection kind of a structure. So you're absolutely right that you have to have all the elements because people really have a different connection how they can actually build this shield.
Okay. Well, let me continue. So I gave you earth, water. I already told you about one of the ways you can use water. Then you have air. Air is an interesting one because air is based on illusion and on the whole idea of not being there. So you can either cast an illusion so that whatever comes after you misses, you hit the illusion, or just you're air, you're not there. It passes through you formlessly without any effect. And a lot of air people tend to be pretty intellectual and not terribly emotional anyway, so that's easy for them to do.
And fire, I guess.
Fire can be done in two ways. One is you can burn up whatever's coming at you. And the other way is actually the exact opposite, and that is they suck all the energy out of it. They freeze it. And then just let it fall to the ground without ever touching them.
How do you know which element you are? Do you have a special way to detect this in other people? So how when people come to you to learn these things, how to know?
It can be a mix. In salesmanship, they talk about 4 styles of how people talk and sell things and buy things. Where people will say, "Oh, I see what you're saying." That's one element. "I hear what you're saying" is another element. "I feel you." That's another way. Okay. So those relate to the different elements. And it can also be a matter of personality. But what I tell people is there's only 4 to try, so just try them and see what works best for you.
It's 1 in 4.
A lot of people who are empaths to begin with have connection to the element of water. Try that one first, because that's the realm. The water is the realm of emotions, the realm of the subconscious.
Do you think there are mixed types? So this is a heated debate among many people, the mixing of types and things like that?
Yeah, I absolutely do think that everyone, there's no one who is a pure type. I come pretty close because my chart, I'm a Scorpio with Scorpio rising in Pisces, strong Pisces moon, and I've got so much water in my chart that I think if you squeeze me, I would drip. Even there, though, I still have earth and air, but I have almost no fire. So no one is 100% anything. It's all mixes. And I think, in fact, this is where some of the elemental things kind of fall down a little bit. One thing I've seen, are you familiar with the Briggs-Myers personality test?
Most probably. I'm just sometimes not good with names, but I'm quite certain.
It's 4 different typologies in it of like either sensitive or not sensitive and so forth.
Yeah.
And to me, there's a very close correspondent what's happening on an elemental level. So, but yeah, with the elements, we have earth, air, fire, and water, and then you also have spirit. So you have a total of 25 combinations. But for a lot of people, you don't have to worry about all the combination. You can focus mainly on the 4 main elements and then see what works. And for spiritual people, if you're really and truly spiritual a person, then you don't need much in the way of shielding, because that's where the positivity comes in.
Right.
And that's the spiritual person's shielding type, is just being positive all the time. Or if not positive, at least being centered and self-contained and contented with who and what they are.
What about content? There's a lot of people who are very aware and content. Many years of meditation usually brings people to be very emotional aware in a certain sense. They are in a quite controlled state. You think that these people need shielding, or you think that that they don't need as much shielding as others?
I would say they still need it, but not as much. They're not creating negativity. They're not attracting it as much because, again, wherever our attention goes, whatever we fear, we attract. If we're not fearing anything, then we're not attracting the negative. As I said, I've met very few people who are really able to do this, but there are some.
I can share. I don't know if you know, but I'm teaching more than 30 years meditation now. I've had meditation centers in different places and many, many groups. So I've been around, and I can tell from my own experience when I've had a couple of times in my life when I really just I was in a financial whatever situation to spend 6 months and basically do nothing else, just meditate, just like pure, almost like a monk-like situation. And I managed to do this a couple of times. I would say that at the end of such a phase, you literally are immune to any kind of emotions flying around. This is a very strange state. Honestly, it feels very awkward going through the town and having this kind of, I don't know the right terms, and I don't want to terms, but I would very much like to know if you, with your shielding expertise and your mirrors up when you go to town, do you also have this feeling of strangeness once you're not intertwined with the people around you?
No, I don't. It's because, first off, my mirror shielding is not absolute. I can still tell what people are feeling. I just don't tell it hard enough. I can see what's there. But I can say, okay, no, I know this is not me. And I know, it's like, and I can set it aside. But I also stay focused within my own self. And it's one of the things also is that it's actually the name of a book. It's what other people think of me is none of my business. I don't care what they think of me. So, there's nothing to react to there. I'm not trying to keep up with the Joneses. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm not trying to dress fancy or whatever. I simply am who I am.
I don't like to bring this up because it opens a whole bag of worms, which I like to stay away on this podcast as far as humanly possible. But in this specific case, I must make an exception from my own being and rules. You know that there is certain spiritual organizations, very popular in America, that try to reach a state called clear, which very much deals with the control of emotions. And they have this whole process to go through. How would you interpret this from your shielding perspective?
I've heard of it. I know what you're referring to. I don't really know what they're doing, though. I mean, I know the terminology. So it's something I cannot really respond to knowledgeably. To me, again, for a lot of this stuff, I like the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. That a lot of this stuff is made very unnecessarily complex.
Yes.
And there's really no reason for it to be so complex.
There is a reason.
What happens is, I'll give you an example. Someone says, well, I can't defend myself. I don't have psychic abilities. So it says, okay, here's a piece of black tourmaline. Here's a piece of quartz. Here's this herb. Here's this wand. Okay, now you've got these things. Now you can do it. So and actually, the things themselves, they do help, but their main role is as a psychological prop to get in touch with your subconscious and to do things that you would think otherwise that you could not do, when in fact you can do them.
Placebo, you mean, yeah.
It's like that's one of the things I emphasize is just using your own mind in visualizations, because what if you forget your crystal, or what if you get psychically attacked unexpectedly, which has happened to me? Your mind is always there with you. And, you can learn to use it instantly or react more quickly than anything else. They say, acting at the speed of thought. You can actually act even faster than that.
I must say that I'm not absolutely sure that in this episode we really took all of our viewers on board, especially when they're very new to the world of spirituality. And I think in a certain way, this conversation had elements of a high level spiritual conversations because, it is a complex stuff with shielding and protection, because you first have to understand the problem. You have to really understand the problem so that you actually understand the need for the protection. And also you have to find a way of framing it in the proper sense. I mean, you said a very beautiful thing in the end. Just keep it simple. It's going to be there. It's going to help you. But first you must understand the need.
Well,
I really hope that people listen.
And here's another quick simile for you. Look on it as a pair of sunglasses that it can tint automatically, so that if you don't go outside without good sunglasses. You don't want your eyes to be damaged by too much light. Same thing with emotions. The shielding that I talk about is basically emotional sunglasses. Now, on a psychological level, what I teach is the same thing as setting good boundaries in psychology.
Now, last question, the standard last question. What would happen if 30% of the people in the US would come to your workshop, learn this? Would it affect the society? How would the world look like, or like a village or a city look like, if a lot of people would learn from your ability? How would it manifest?
Interesting question. Now, in science fiction and fantasy, they have stories about societies that are fully telepathic or empathic and how they would behave. And one of the things that would happen was that the concept of privacy would be largely eliminated. Because if you're able to see another person's thoughts and ideas, then, and if you do it on a regular basis, then nothing is private. I know you're diabetic. It's like you're trying to hide it. It doesn't work. But the key here would be just to be learning to open up to people and to be honest with both yourself and others. And I think if there were a high level of empathy, that there would be a lot more people doing a lot more things for other people. One of the basic rules of karma is that what you put out comes back to you.
I think this is an interesting ending, because maybe a lot of people misunderstood your intention of shielding. It's not a cut. It's a way of protection and awareness. And you now just said there would be more empathy or more understanding. So basically shielding is also a path to a more clear emotional, it's actually a positive thing, and not a passive aggressive kind of a thing. It's actually a positive thing.
Well, the reflective energy that I do is for other people to learn from it. So I reflect the good as well as the bad. Whatever they're putting out is what they're going to get back. But, karma is whatever you send out comes back to you. And all I'm doing is facilitating that and using.
Well, I thank you so much, Samuel. We will, of course, put all the links to your website and to your services. I think it's the Orlando area, and I guess online as well as in real world. Everything will be definitely at the bottom of the podcast.